All right, good. So today we want to kind of look at a more localized version of what we looked at last time. So last class, we started off by looking at web hosting at the internet level, right? You're looking to go on the internet and you're looking. Wait, what did we do last class? All right, sorry. Sorry about that. So last class, we tried to have an appreciation for what the internet is and all the components and how websites work at a basic level, how web servers work, web requests. We looked very lightly at our hosting options. Um, what are key things to look out for when selecting a hosting option. We took time out to appreciate that we have different stacks based on the different technologies that we may use. So we have the LAMP stack, which would be by default Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, which is you have variations of the LAMP stack according to the OS. So the first letter depicts the OS, and the rest of it is pretty much standard. Except now you have for the M part of it, have MariaDB instead of MySQL, right? But ultimately, we took time out to appreciate and explore that very lightly. Now, today, I would love for us to look at the different web server technologies that exist. So last week, I pointed out that the machine is not the web server. The machine is the machine at the hardware level. But what makes it a web or email or file server is what you choose to do or what application you choose to install on this machine. All right. So we want to look today at a comparison chart of the different web servers that exist pretty much. So I have up a chart. I just found a comparison chart because I don't know. Actually, it's the first I'm seeing some of these. But this comparison chart, I'm going to see how best I can save it and provide it for you guys. Or maybe I'll just share the link to it. But this comparison chart showcases all the different web server applications, the OS that they can run on, what language they were developed in, and what stack can run on top of it. The most popular stacks generally you'll find are ASP.NET, Java, and maybe PHP and the LAMP stack, right? Obviously, you can't just pick a web server technology and chuck a software on it. So leading up until recent years, Microsoft had been very, very closed with their ASP.NET or their whole .NET offering. So you couldn't just throw up an Apache server and then throw an ASP.NET application on it because Apache just wouldn't know how to process in the ASP.NET workflow. Similarly, you couldn't throw a PHP application on an IIS server, and IIS is short for Internet Information Services. Right? So you couldn't just throw PHP or Ruby on IIS and expect it to work. IIS was outfitted specifically for ASP.NET. But then you have other ones like Apache, which you'll see, well, this first recognizable name, because I've never ever used, I didn't even know there was an AOL server. I've never used this before, right? But Apache is very popular. So Apache is the A in the LAMP, the acronym LAMP. So you have LAMP, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and I think the P can be Python or Perl also. So that diversity on the PHP, Perl, Python shows that Apache is more open to more technologies. So while it couldn't host .NET, it could host Perl, PHP, Python, and Ruby. I can't tell you offhand which other stack, but Apache is actually open source, so people could actually go in and write their adapter libraries for it to support um, other applications. Nowadays, Apache, and you would see it here, ASP.NET is available via module. So I think recently somebody wrote a module for Apache. Recently, meaning a few years ago. When I say recently, I mean a few years ago. Somebody wrote libraries that allow you to actually host ASP.NET applications in Apache. So that was a good move on that part. So it makes it easier for you to develop in a more heterogeneous sphere, as opposed to needing everything to be on the same stack, right? So essentially, one of the challenges that a webmaster may face is that, and this is a challenge that I actually faced during my earlier years. You may be thrown into a situation where your employer uses one technology and you are versed in another, or they have one development stack or environment. They have servers outfitted to host PHP applications, but then they need you to develop it in .NET, so to speak. And worst case scenario, you only have one web server at your disposal. So you only have one web server that needs to be able to host more than one types of applications. So you can't put the ASP.NET stuff on top of Apache. And I can tell you that two web servers on the same machine don't necessarily play nicely. And I'll get into that a bit later. All right. So let us just take a few moments to scroll through. So during this course, we want to focus on two main ones, being Apache and IIS. Let me just scroll across looking for IIS. All right, here's IIS. So IIS, the leftmost one. Yeah, the latest version I think is 7.5. No, I think it passed 7.5 actually. Yeah, man, that passed 7.5. So IIS is not free. And that's another reason the LAMP stack wins, because Linux you can get free. Let's just say you can get that free, void of support. Apache you can get free. MySQL you get free, even though Oracle is trying to monetize it. So the community jumped up and created MariaDB to keep that whole database offering free. And PHP it's open source, it's free. So are Perl and Python. But let's focus on PHP. All right. So it's easy to just set up a LAMP server. Monetarily, money-wise, it's easy to set it up. Component-wise, you may have some configuration challenges because, I mean, when you install, you set up Linux, then you have to download your Apache, right? And then you have to download and install Apache. And I don't know who here has Linux experience, but I've had to administrate Linux servers, and it's not something I miss. I'm not gonna go ahead and talk. It's not something I miss at all, right? So especially if you're not using the user interface, right? If you're using the straight command line, it's not something I miss. So you're going to have to get the Apache, download, install, then configure. Then you're going to have to download PHP and make sure that the PHP folder knows where the Apache folder is. And then you get MySQL, and you have to know that, make sure that the Apache knows where MySQL folder is, and MySQL and PHP knows where MySQL is. And I mean, you have to tie everything together. You have to unify everything manually. So that is configuring the LAMP stack from scratch. Now, somebody saw the struggles on Linux. Some Windows user, I'm sure, saw the struggle on Linux. and then said, okay, I'm a Windows user. I can't bother with this headache. And I've done it on Windows also. It was a headache. All right, so you had to download each one of them and configure together. So then they created a more bootstrap version called WAMP. All right. So, well, WAMP, no, the W means, all right, we have 10 minutes in this session. Yeah, so now the W means Windows. So you have Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So they created an application called WAMP Server where you just download the executable and in true Windows fashion, double click it and click next, 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 next. And then it installs all of those components, the A, M, and the P. And everybody knows where everybody is. And you get a nice little management console where you can see what's running and what's not. And life is easy, right? So that is the story of WAMP. You have other iterations. You have XAMPP, which is ZAMPP, which I think the X is really just saying that it can be installed on any OS. I think WAMP right now can be installed on any OS. So you don't necessarily have to manually configure it even if you're using Linux. You can just steamroll the installation through XAMPP or WAMP if you download it on the Linux servers, right? But the whole point of that is that these bootstrap installers, they configure everything for you and they give you some diagnostics panels where you can see if your services, meaning your PHP service is running okay, your MySQL service is running okay, and your Apache web server is up. So once again, in case I didn't mention it earlier, the PHP refers to the code libraries required by the language to be able to, for you to code and for you to run PHP commands. All right, you guys would have done that from applied web programming. The M represents MySQL or MariaDB. I think XAMPP uses MariaDB, WAMP uses MySQL still. And that represents the database engine. And then the Apache, right, is the web server that deals with the processing of HTTP requests and the serving up of content. All right. So in the list here, just going back to the Apache, you see it was developed with C and it supports HTTPS. With a module it supports ASP.NET. It has no real support for Java, which is no surprise because Java is even more selfish, let's say selfish than ASP.NET. All right, it supports server-side includes and server-side Java as well. Nothing there for JavaScript. They give you an admin console and it is available on all operating systems. All right, which is a huge plus. So regardless of the operating system you're using, you can run PHP applications. So that's what makes the LAMP stack very attractive, because if it's Linux, it can run. If it's Windows, it can run, and it's all free. So, there's no real setup cost. So you bootleg your version of Windows or you download your free Linux and you set up your LAMP stack and you can start hosting your web applications easily. All right. So for those of you who are good in PHP, if you ever get a client who wants an intranet setup and they have a very low budget, you can, well, I mean, Apache or the whole LAMP stack is a very cost-effective way of getting them up and running. Now, IIS is a bit different because IIS is plainly it's really just the web server. It has nothing to do with database, and the limitations on the language, at least up until recently, like around 2012 or so, is the limitations around the language that can be used would have been the fact that it's only .NET languages could be used. But .NET has a wide array of support. It has a wide support for languages nowadays. So now you can code in Python, you can code in PHP while in the .NET sphere. They have developed a number of modules to improve support for those other languages, PHP, Perl, and Ruby, etc. So IIS is very, very powerful now. So it can support quite a few web applications with minimal effort. And once again, it is not free. However, it comes as a feature of Windows. So if the person has a Windows server or even a Windows machine, I think Down to Home Edition has IIS as an add-on. And for the duration of this class, I will show you how to enable that. And we'll also go through how to set up the WAMP server. So once the person has a Windows machine, you can enable IIS and then you can start hosting web apps there. You may require some amount of tweaking to get like PHP apps up and running, but regardless of that, the functionality is indeed available for you to accomplish all of that. And I see that I have a comment. Oh, yes, good evening. All right, so we have 4 minutes left, so I'll just run this off. Yeah. So for today's class, we'll be focusing on IIS and Apache. You do have other honorable mentions, would include Nginx, as I was corrected last week that it's not Nginx, it's Nginx, right? I've never used Nginx, at least not directly. I've never had to install it and or administrate it, but I'm pretty sure that I've had to interact with it through some third-party hosting application, right? Some PaaS or something like that. And we'll go through what PaaS means also. And another honorable mention would be Node.js. So when I started discovering Node.js or started working with Angular, and I realized that Angular doesn't, I mean, obviously you can put it on .NET, you can put it on PHP, but if you want to build just a purely JavaScript driven application, no other server-side language or no server-side language, just JavaScript, that Node.js, which is purely developed with JavaScript and C++, can act as a web host right there and then. So you fire up your Node server and it gives you the web hosting address and you can just serve up your website, web application contents just like that. So I guess this one is even more lightweight because it fits on any OS, and I mean it's JavaScript. It has, well, I mean it's basically limited to JavaScript applications like or frameworks like Angular or Knockout or Blackout or no, not Blackout, sorry, Backbone, or what, React is the other one. But I had a very short stint with it. I explored it, but it's pretty cool. So those are two other ones that exist really that are popular. But once again, for the duration of this class, we'll be looking at IIS and we'll be looking at, well, Apache through WAMP or XAMPP. All right. So a number of you are joining now and we have no time left in this particular session. So what I'm going to do, as the time runs down, I'm going to stop the share, start up a new session, send the link, and I'll send it both ways. I'll send it in the email and in the Google Drive doc. I'll just update the doc. And then so you can just monitor either one, and then we just jump back in and then get, hit off where we leave off. All right. So stand by.